All right, well, before we get into my official presentation, I wanted to talk real quickly about the prediction site that has been down, the Near Space Venture prediction site that's been down for a while. Troy is unable to help us with that because of his current position with the powers that be in Washington, so we cannot use his expertise on this. However, Jerry Gable, some of you know him, I believe. He is hard at work on this project for us, and we should have something from him soon. According to what the last email I had, we will have a prediction site that uses NWS data directly from them. It's being interpreted in a roundabout way so that you do not have to cut and paste it any longer. One of the items that I'm going to do, though, however, is on your announcement page. When you post an announcement, I'm going to add some optional stuff. One of them is going to be the weight and size of your balloon, and I think the other one is going to be the weight of your overall package. Okay? We want to do that so that we can start following and tracking exactly what people are flying and how they're flying it and what the prediction site was versus the actual site was on the landing. I also have a gentleman in Kansas City helping me write some code that will make us, give us the ability to track it live against your prediction. Okay, we're doing this not to replace APRS FI, trust me, but getting the data, the prediction data into APRS FI is a little bit klutzier than I'd like. So we're going to be able to produce the graph of the prediction, and then you'll be able to follow it in, on the same graph, you'll be able to follow the actual. That's in the works too. Certainly that should be done by no later than next year, but I'm hoping, frankly, within about a month or two, okay? We're real close. All the coding is done. It's just a matter of putting it all together and making it all fill in the blanks, if you will. It's a bit more complicated than I thought it was going to be because of the way the NOAA and NWS has changed their procedures. Questions about that? I get a lot of questions on the internet. I get 1 or 2 emails a week asking me about that. So if you have any questions, be sure to hit me up on it. Or if you have any suggestions, ideas, thoughts, I'm willing to listen. I just don't promise anything. Okay, let's see. I got to find a holder for this, don't I? All right. Jurassic pigs. Okay, we have 2 stories here, right? We always sit here and the first thing we talk about is all the technology. Paul just put us through an hour lecture on the technology of all doing this, putting it all together, all the gizmos he handed out, and so on and so forth. I have a slightly different take on all of this because I try to get a lot of youth involved that don't necessarily want to be there. A lot of the youth that you guys work with, you teachers especially, they're either captive audience or they want to be there in the first place because they're in robotics clubs or whatever. So, but the kids I work with a lot are the Boy Scouts, the Boys and Girls Clubs of Kansas City, okay, inner city kids. These kids have generally zero interest in this. But what they like to do is get out in the woods, okay? So this is where we're going to go. See if we can figure out how to make this thing work. A lot of them still think that the world is flat. They believe in the Flat Earth Society, right? They have no idea that the world is round. Some of these kids just cannot conceive of this global idea. You show them a table and you say it's round like that. No, it isn't round, it's flat. So they want to be able to go and prove to themselves that it's round, right? So I say, well, fly a high altitude balloon. You can be completely in charge of it. You can put a camera in there and you can see the curvature of the Earth when you get up there. And they say, okay, as long as I'm in control of everything that's going to happen, we'll try it that way, and that'll prove that it's flat. He's going to try and prove it's flat, right? So we get them together with our version of Paul's equipment. It's a kit that puts it, that allows him to build his own stuff. We give him everything he's going to need to put this project together. I'm going to go fast because it's usually a little bit longer. And I have a very thick presentation, I guess, according to Zach. So we teach these kids how to solder. We teach these kids how to put the batteries packed together, tie it into their camera to make the whole thing work. And we do this in the first day that we're with these guys, okay? We also give them a paper box that we designed some years ago with the help of a cardboard paper box designer. It all folds together nicely. And we give them the challenge of putting the space blanket on at the end. Of course, they always want to know why the space blanket. Why do you guys put a space blanket on it?
Looks pretty.
It looks pretty, and that's why we tell them in the long run. We ask them, why do they put a space blanket on it? They say, you know, radar detection, or to keep it warm, or to make it shiny up in the sky. I said, oh, those are all good reasons, but the real reason is because it looks damn cool. It does. It just looks damn cool. So, I mean, we've had quite a few over the years. Obviously, our packages in the past were bigger than they are today. But everybody's seen some of these because some of these are your guys's, okay? I take pictures from all over the place. This was one of our earlier ones as well. I hope everybody brought a flag to fly tomorrow. It's Flag Day, you know. This was one of our better packages that we had one time at a scout function. We got there, and one of the guys showed up at the last minute, but he still wanted to fly. He had all his equipment. He just didn't have anything to fly it in. He literally took off his boot, took off his sock. We stuffed it all inside the sock. Okay. Honest to God, this is a true story. We stuffed it into his sock. It went to 107,495 feet. So. Yeah, so when you show me your fancy boxes, keep in mind this sock did the same thing. Okay.
I noticed there was also an aperture for so air could come through.
It kept it working. It survived the whole trip. He had his own parachute on it too, a little tiny thing. It was about 1.5 feet in diameter. So it worked great, and we had a good time with it. I was laughing too hard for anybody to take my picture with it. So that's me standing there holding it, but I was laughing pretty hard. Okay, so like I said, I'm moving along here pretty good. This is one of our older setups. You can see we were still using what was that thing called? Anybody remember anymore? Palm Pilot. Yeah, we were still using a Palm Pilot to do some of our programming. Look at the size of that separator ring, huh? Those were the old days. So now we're a little bit more sophisticated today. We use the same kind of equipment that most of you guys are using. And we did the same kind of predictions. Of course, our prediction system is right now not there, but it will be there again, I promise. And we got a lot of gas out that day to do a big launch. Everybody's got to have a big launch, you know. We have had this particular girl here. She was doing her high school senior class project, and she wanted us to launch a balloon for her. She funded the entire thing. It was a kind of a cold day, but we got it up in the air for her. She got an A. We went to the presentation, a little bit, but we had a good time with it. There's Troy. You all know him, I'm sure. There's one of the GPSLs, probably. And here's the Inner City Boys and Girls Club again with all the packages that they built. And they all had pretty much the same thing, camera in them, some sensor or two. I don't remember what. Oh, they were all pressure sensors and temperature sensors in all of them. We plotted the whole thing out when we got back. And it didn't change. There we go. I don't know who that guy is. But all these balloon things you're seeing us do, they're all pretty much the same as everybody else does. We had a band one time. How many of you had a band for their launch? Nobody? Come on. We had a band for our launch. Oh, there you go. So we had a band. I mean, but up till now, just about everything that we did then is the same thing that you guys do every time. In fact, it's pretty much the same thing that NASA does. It's the same thing that NWS does, and NOAA does. Anybody who launches these things pretty much does the same thing, right? You build a package, put it all together, put a balloon on it, let it go, and it goes up in the air. A couple of years ago, GPSL. Some of the pictures. You get up in the air, you start taking pictures. And all of us around the world do the same thing at this point. I mean, there's all kinds of differences in the electronics you're putting in, the measurements you're taking, the experiments you're doing, how you built it, the pickaxe versus the Raspberry Pis, everything else, but it's all pretty much the same thing that you've done. But what goes up, of course, must, of course, come down. Okay, this is where some of these kids really get excited about what you're doing because it's the chase that they're into, okay? It's the fact that they get to go out and find these things. So we show them all kinds of tricked out ways to do it. We got tricked out cars up there in the corner. We've had a CAP airplane. Brian is going to chase us tomorrow. He's got his plane with him. Got Deb up on top of the on top of the on top of the car, doing her best to find these things. Okay, and once out in Kansas, we had a helping hand by our friend the Tin Man. He was out there. Yeah, he probably does. But this is the way we go chasing these things around. So you're Indiana Jones, okay? I mean, once this thing hits the ground, let's face it, you're done with the electronics, unless you're Harry, of course, and then you spend the day looking for it again. But that was the exciting part for them. They spent half a day looking for it, right? Indiana Jones. So you've got all your GPSs, and what is it? What is it, though, when it's on the ground? It's a geocache, right? All right, so Deb and I, the first time we did this, way back in whatever year that was, we were doing it as a geocache because we didn't have all the equipment. We didn't have anything to follow the balloon in the air, and I didn't even have a radio in the truck at that time. But Troy had invited us to the launch, so we went out to the launch, and we started getting ahead of where we thought the balloon was. I kept calling Troy and said, where is it now? And he'd give us the coordinates. We'd pop that into the GPS, and we just kept moving. We actually found the balloon first, using it as a geocache instead of as a, I might have hit the wrong button here, instead of as everything. Now, if you're out in Colorado, okay, I lambasted Colorado a little bit at Dayton as well. You don't have too many problems finding these things. I mean, come on, it gets over the top of a rise, and that causes a problem. You know, you guys really got to rethink your stories a little bit. Get it here in Kansas, or was that Nebraska? I forget. It might have been Iowa.
They're all the same.
They're all about the same. I mean, where's the balloon in that picture? I ask you.
That's not bad. We took 10 feet tall.
Oh, we've done that too, right? So here it is. You can see that, right? sort of laying there in the field. I mean, that's the kind of thing that they like to do. You know, you get those kids out there looking for that. You kind of get it. Mission Impossible. See it up there in the corner? And this is soybeans. These only grow 3 feet high in the first place. So we take them chasing through the soybeans and through the corn, and get the permission of the farmers, of course. But even when it's laying there, how is it that these things fall on the ground in between the rows instead of across the top? I don't get that part. So we've recovered them from a number of bean fields, as you can see. But Missouri's kind of the same way as Iowa and Nebraska. Now, once in a blue moon, we get really lucky, and it lands out there in the middle of a field. And I think this is the one we did in October, wasn't it, Deb? This was just last October, and you can see it couldn't have been laid out any prettier. That was pretty easy to find, except for the fact that the mud was up over the top of my tires to get back to the road that this was on. This one just laid out real pretty in Missouri. That's my son there. This is the Boys and Girls Club package again. You can see all the packages down there. It went right through a storm on the way up. It came right through a storm on the way down, and only one camera got ruined. And all the pictures were fine. So I have like 1,000 pictures from this one trip. This one was Paul's, and this is how we found it when we got there. We got there, frankly, about 1 minute before the first car came over the hill.
Sweet.
Now, this one was kind of interesting and fun because we got out there looking for this last year, and this old man here, he's the one who owns the property, and he said, yeah, you can go look for this stuff. I want to come with you, but I don't want to do any work. Okay? So we got out there, and we finally found all the stuff, and I handed him that package just to hold it for the picture, and he says, I knew you guys were going to find some work for me to do. What was he? He was like 92 years old or something like that. But he just stood there and watched us and laughed as we're searching all up and down the fields trying to find that thing. He just had a great old time. This is an interesting story this time because you literally could not get to where the balloon came down. We could see it on the map. We could see where it was, but we could not get there. But we ran into this gentleman here and his granddaughter and told him our predicament. And he says, oh, I think I know where that thing is. And so he jump in his pickup truck, and we're traveling through the woods at like 30 miles an hour, dodging trees like you wouldn't believe. And all of a sudden he slams on the brake just before we get to this riverbed. He says, now, there used to be a bridge, he says, just a little ways down here, but it burned down during the Civil War. Yeah, that's what he said. And I said, how old are you again? You know? he says, I know how to go get it. I'll go get this thing for you. So he puts on these big boots, and he goes wading across to go get the thing and come back. I felt really bad because on the way back, I watched the water creep up over the top of his boots, and he'd filled up his boots with water. But that was him and his granddaughter. He went and retrieved it from us because there was literally no way to get to where this balloon was in between these rivers. This was how we were greeted at one site we got to. We had gone in and we had seen that the balloon was hanging in a tree over a creek. And so we didn't have any equipment to go get at that time, so we went back into town to get a little bit of equipment. When we came back, we literally were met with 4 or 5 guys standing there with 30-06 rifles. All right?
And Budweiser's on the tailgate.
And Budweiser at the tailgate. So to the tune of dueling banjos, Troy stops in his car ahead of us, and Deb and I and the people that were with us continued to move on. I cranked up dueling banjos a little as we drove by. And we ended up having to pay a lot of money to go get that flight. That was the most expensive flight we ever took because just getting it cost $500. So these guys were going on a cruise the next week. So we figured that they were just trying to cover their tips. But that's a true story. We had to do that.
So was it their property?
It was their property. If you remember GPSL in 2008, it was a very hot day, okay? Maybe a lot of you don't know the rest of the story. Part of the story was we were flying an experimental package called Fred. Fred is a decaying body part, human. Not really, but that's what it smells like to a dog. And the idea was we were to drop this parachute and then the dogs were going to find it wherever it was. Well, it landed in the middle of this preserve somewhere, the state preserve, and that was fine, okay? We got there, and all these dogs come running out to help find this thing. The problem was the dog owners brought no water for themselves, no water for the dogs. Now, it's 105 degrees outside, if you remember. It was a hot day. So about half an hour into the search, the dogs are passing out, the people are passing out, so we had to change it from a practice drill to a real drill and actually go rescue people. I threw out a backpack filled with water, and me and another guy and Troy went searching out for these people. We brought them all back. Everybody came back safely, including our package, but we had the dogs and they'd failed miserably in their job. But we did use dogs once.
Where was that?
That was it's in Kansas City, but I don't remember. Liberty. We launched from Liberty, yeah. That was a fun launch. Okay, so now to the story that we're really here about, okay? So one time we launched on a Sunday morning, and that balloon went over 100,000 feet, I don't remember exactly, came down, and according to the map, it was right in the middle of nowhere. Literally, it was like a mile on every direction from where this thing was, right in the middle. Couldn't have been any more in the middle. So we pull up to this farmer's yard, this man on the right there, and tell him our predicament. Well, he wasn't there, he was at church. We had to wait for him to come home from church. He came home. We told him our predicament and said we need to go get this. And he says, well, I'm a pig farmer, wild pigs. He says he raises them and he sells them all over the world to high-end restaurants, okay? So these pigs are, well, you know what big pigs look like. And if you've never seen a real big pig, these things are huge. I mean, they're monsters, right? He says, it's unlikely that if that package hit the ground that you're going to have anything left of it. He says they are deathly afraid of anything new. They will just tear it to ribbons. So we're thinking, oh, great, you know. This is not going to be a good adventure.
Really good pictures, though.
Yeah. Well, so we hiked back there through the pigs and the pig extras, literally up above your ankles. I mean, you know, halfway up your calf. That's how deep some of it was. And these are some of the pigs. You can see they were big pigs. They were rather large pigs. This is when we got back to where the balloon was hanging in a tree. It was hanging in a tree. I could walk up and grab it like that. You couldn't have gotten any luckier if you had paid to be that lucky. So we had all these pigs around us to get this tree. See, there it is, hanging in the tree. How lucky can you get that you can reach it and the pigs can't? Well, there's thousands of these pigs out there. I'm talking thousands. We're not talking 50. I'm talking 1,000 pigs, all weighing 500 pounds or more. Well, I think you've all seen the second movie of Jurassic Park, you know, where they're chasing all the dinosaurs and the dinosaurs are chasing them and everybody's running away from everybody and trying to get away from it. Well, these pigs are used to this farmer with his truck being food. And the farmer just decided at that moment that he was going to try and come back and find us and help us get back to the front. So we climbed into the back of his truck and took off at a rip-roaring 5 miles an hour. And every pig that could see or hear his truck started chasing us. So we've got all these huge pigs, thousands of them, chasing us, just like the Jurassic dinosaurs were chasing those guys in that movie. So Jurassic pigs made a lot of sense to me, right? But we've had encounters with other animals besides the pigs. We had one land in a farmer's front yard, in the front yard of his house. They saw it land. And they were so afraid of it because they thought it was probably something from outer space, or it was government, or somebody was trying to kill them. They were afraid to go out of their house. Okay, now we didn't learn this till the next day, but they were afraid to go out of their house. We couldn't find the balloon because the tracker had failed. This was early on, back in, I don't know, early on, 2005 maybe. And so they were looking out their window the next morning and they saw a couple of cows walk by the package, so they figured it was probably okay. So they went out there and found our little, you know, if you found, call us. And they called us, but the cows were the interesting part there. Now one time, actually this was last year, we ran into something that, well, I don't care what you expect to see, this is not what you expect to see. Okay? And if you try to tell me that you expected to run into camels along this trip, I just don't believe you, okay? Now, maybe that one that landed in Morocco last year from California Near Space, they may have had an interesting adventure with camels, but we didn't expect them in Iowa. So these are our camel experiences from Iowa. And of course, not all recoveries are quite as easy as some of them that we've had. Everybody gets the lucky balloon one like the Jurassic pigs where we can just pull it out of the sky, but a lot of times that's up way up in a tree. And of course, if you go find the owner of the tree, he says things like, oh, that tree's too expensive for us to cut down, and I don't blame him, you know, it might be an expensive tree, who knows. So we've been really lucky though, considering we fly in Missouri. We've been real lucky and only had a couple of them land in trees like this one. This one was done, we took it down by, one of the local boys there was a fisherman. He was a fisherman with a bow and arrow. And so he had a bow and arrow all rigged up for that, so he decided he'd put it over the top of it and bring it down. Well, he went right through our parachute, so of course, pretty much took the end of the parachute. But we were able to pull it down eventually through his efforts for us, and we did recover it without having to climb the tree or cut it down, because we also had a chainsaw with us, so that might have been what happened. And this is the girl that hired us to do the weather experiment for our high school project again. Other times we've had to climb the tree, just like you have. Fortunately, this time we had my daughter's boyfriend with us, and I made him climb the tree. I don't know about some of you guys, but I don't climb trees anymore. I just don't do it. Paul probably still does, because he likes trees. I swear he aims at them. Having recovered a bunch for you, I know what you do.
I think there's a magnet.
A magnet, yeah. So he climbed up the tree and he managed to get it down for us, as you can see. That worked out pretty good. We've had fence landings. This is Angela. She just graduated high school. Can't tell that, but she did. And this is our normal kind of landing, across a barrier, more like a fence than anything else. Easy landings, more easy landings, just not necessarily hard to find. This was one of Paul's again, I think, that I recovered for you. This is where it landed in the tree. See, now, who can complain about that tree landing, right? We've launched and landed in farmers' fields, and what we liked about this one, this was a Boy Scout launch and a CAP launch, and so work went into this particular launch, and we recovered it just fine. More fun landings and launches. I try to bring to the scouts and the kids who are not necessarily looking for a scientific experiment how much fun it can be to do the chase. Okay? They like getting out there and doing the chase. Making it a geocache search for them is a really cool thing to do. Now, if they get interested in the science behind it afterwards, that's great. But a lot of these kids had no interest at all. The Boys and Girls Clubs of Kansas City, we walked into there to do this presentation for them. They couldn't have been more bored if they had tried. I mean, the last thing they wanted to do was hear about this, and they were like this, you know. But once we got them building stuff and showed them how to solder things and put the package together, they got really excited about the whole thing. They thought it was just awesome, you know. But you had to get them there in the first place. And then Brian Short, for us, the next day, he tracked him on a big screen TV for us while we did the recovery. And all of the kids sat there, and he tells me it went just superb, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah. So these are the kind of things that we like to do to get the kids interested in the first place. Then you can hook them with your kind of Raspberry Pi setups. And so we do a lot of that. I mean, a lot of those pictures. And of course, your last resort finding it, right? Call me. Now, I have never put reward offered on mine, and I've always gotten it back. Okay? I did launch 4 last summer, none of which had a radio in it, any kind of a transmitter or tracker in it, because this was in West Virginia. How many have been to West Virginia? Then you know why we didn't bother with any electronics. You're never going to get it back. Of the 4 we launched, I've gotten 1 back. 1 call came in about it. He says, what do I do with all this stuff in it? And I says, well, keep it for finding it for me. It was just souvenirs from the Boy Scout Jamboree that we launched it from. But only 1 out of 4, that's pretty bad. I then generally go into who we are, what we're doing. You guys all know this, so I won't spend a lot of extra time on that. Websites, I do want to encourage everybody here, if you're not doing it now, to please register with, tell us about your flight. Not for you, for us, because the people all over the world literally watch these things. I watch people all over the world do this. The UK guys who are flying their Mylar balloons that travel all over Europe before they come back down, if we didn't know about them, we couldn't track them. And it's fun just to watch how they're going. When you launch something in the UK and it's landing in the Ukraine or in the Mediterranean Ocean, that's pretty darn cool. After it's taken a swing around into Russia and everywhere else, that's pretty cool stuff. We have Greece doing launches, and we have Poland doing launches. We have launches all over the world that are just kind of fun to watch. So please post your flights on the webpage. You know how to get there. Hutchinson, this is us. I don't remember what else is on here. This is last year or 2 years ago when we were here, whatever year that was. Was it 3 years ago? Whenever it was. Near Space Ventures, that's us. That's Deb and I and one other guy at this point. Troy's pretty much out of it because of commitments with the government, which is also why we don't have a prediction page anymore. So, questions? Zach, did I get done in time? Ooh, look at that. I pushed it a little bit. Yeah, okay, good.